pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
On the agenda this evening, we have some quarterly updates from our department heads, from the DPW and police. We're gonna cover old and new business, and then go into a non-public session. Any opening comments, John?
Not that I know of. I know what the rec department's got some stuff coming up for Easter.
Yeah, well, they just did the Easter drive-by,
Did they do?
yeah, on Saturday.
Right.
Yep. Which, was lightly attended, but it was good. Everything
Good.
was done safe and went well.
Just to give you an update, the fair has started to meet. Plans are to have it, unless something changes, we will have as close to a traditional fair on that third Saturday of August as possible. So planning meetings are in process, so for those people in town who have helped for many, many years, start expecting phone calls and things like that. But as of right now, the fair intends to progress as normal or as normal as possible.
Awesome, excellent.
Good news.
Jason, any opening comments or?
No.
No. Scott?
I just want to kind of set the stage for the department head quarterlies. We don't really have an agenda or criteria that we give them yet. I'm hoping that as we start this process, the select board will decide what items you would like the department heads to cover each time they meet with us quarterly, to give you an update on what's going on. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to be able to communicate something back to them so that I can set their expectations on what they need to be prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured this first cycle, we kind of feel each other out to see what's important to you, and that'll establish what the expectations will be for each quarter. I didn't bother scheduling a quarterly meeting in the fall because we do budget reviews at that time anyway, so that effectively becomes the quarterly meeting for them.
Yep.
We have plenty of discussion around each department at that point, so that's kind of where we're at.
Alright, sounds good. So we got you, Peter. A little ahead of schedule, but.
That's fine.
Alright.
Yeah, he doesn't mind.
No, actually, sooner the better. I get home soon. Now, actually, my busy part of the year was winter. Of course, January wasn't too bad, but we got hammered pretty good in February.
Yeah.
And then March came along, wasn't too bad. The mud season the last couple of weeks hit us, but it wasn't one of the worst years I've had since I've been here, but we probably spent $15,000-$20,000 worth of stone put in some of these mud spots. As far as our equipment, had one major breakdown, had one truck had an exhaust leak, and some other stuff which cost us about $6,500. Other than that, it's been mostly routine maintenance.
Alright,
and
so
repair.
everything seems pretty good.
So
then,
far, knock
yeah.
on wood, yep.
Yeah.
We're getting ready for spring and our summer projects.
Yep.
I've been out dig saping for culvert changes, Collins Road, we cut the trees down there in that class 6 section, or whatever you want to describe it, but trees and all the stumps been taken out of there. My plans are next week to start on the Perry Road, Collins intersection, get that done.
Okay.
Then we've got some drainage to do alongside. Going up the first steep hill up Collins Road.
Yeah.
1,200 feet of drainage I want to put in there.
So how's that look initially? Like kind of what you expected so far? Or?
So far, but I won't know until I start digging in the road. I'm hoping we don't hit ledge. The intersection we haven't hit ledge so far.
Yeah.
Thought I gave us a 325 excavator for nothing, so all I did was put feet
Wow.
operator in it.
It's very nice. Very generous.
So that answers your question. That's why I told you, a lot of times they'll just loan equipment.
Yeah.
So everyone's freaking out like we've signed a contract with someone. It's,
No.
a lot of times it's just a good faith,
Yeah.
Yeah.
good neighborly piece that they loan us,
And there's a
so.
couple of people in town that does the same thing, helps me
Mhm.
out and stuff, so.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than I've had in other places where I worked.
Beautiful. Yeah, something I've noticed, like, everybody in town seems to reach out when you're in need,
Yeah.
no matter how big or small the project is.
Do we typically give a notice of thank you
I
for
was just
this?
thinking that myself.
That's,
don't think
that's
so.
no small
Yeah.
change to have an excavator
Mhm.
loaned to you.
Especially that size.
Yeah.
Alright. Look at drafting letters, like start doing letters of appreciation for
Yeah,
some of these things.
yeah, I know we have people that loan equipment to the, fire department too without any issues, so that's another piece that, at some point, get that information from Chief Lund, so.
You know, one of them that does that, he does the same thing for me too.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe, I guess that would be one part, maybe just keep track of those people that do that for you, and then,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
quarterly, we can go through and
Send-
recognize them.
Yeah, send out letters of some sort.
Mhm.
I scheduled for the town sweep on the 22nd, 23rd of this month, so we town cleanup as far as winter sand, road debris, so that'll be done before the end of April.
Okay,
I'm in the process of getting line striped on the roads. So I'm hoping probably end of April, sometime in May to get that done.
everybody likes to drive over those fresh lines.
Well, they try to do it at nighttime when the road's not busy.
Yeah.
There's always somebody up there. I think one year was Jason, but I'm not. It's been a few years since I think it's due, so.
And, will you just keep us in the loop on when, we expect to start to see some of the paving done? And that's something I wanna, so, for example, only cause this is one of the few roads I've been able to drive down after, consistent from base or binder, and then onto the top coat. When you have a huge frost heave, is that something you communicate to them, and is there something they're able to do, or we could just kinda
Well,
stuck with it, or?
No, if it's still there, we'll usually put a shim over it. And to be honest, if I knew that was gonna do like it did, there's a winter mix and a summer mix. I should have put them in a winter mix, that way the water wouldn't go down in it.
Yeah,
Cause the summer base coarse materials, it's more stone and less sand.
uh-huh,
The winter base has got a little bit more sand, so it seals it so the water don't go down through the base material.
gotcha.
So, do you think it'd be good to use that winter mix? Since we do it as, like what we're doing is putting down the base first?
And leaving it through the winter, yes.
Yeah, so,
Yep.
alright. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, 'cause that's a point of contention with some people, they say you should top coat it just so that you don't have the heaving, but then
That's right.
we want some heaving to see where the trouble spots are.
Well,
So if the
yes,
winter mix will
Yeah.
kinda rectify it a little bit
Yeah.
to stop some of that water
Yeah.
from going through.
Yeah.
Alright. Is there a significant cost difference for that?
Not the same price.
Alright, so they can do that at any point in the season?
Oh, yeah, it's just a matter of computer programming that add more sand into the mix.
Okay,
Basically, everything's automated, so it's a mix code they put in.
alright. So we'll do that for our base coats
Mhm.
going forward.
Yeah. We've started grading some of the roads, but just a temporary fix for the time being, because the side of the road is still soft.
Yeah,
You know, get on the side of the road with a grader will bury it.
yeah,
Trying to get some of the potholes out for the public,
okay,
some of the tire ruts and stuff, so we're working on that.
yeah, it's a busy one, I know you said that it wasn't your worst one that you've seen yet, but,
No, I've seen a lot worse than what we had this year.
wow,
Well, prime example is Public Pond last year.
Yeah.
oh, was it worse last?
Oh, yeah, last year was bad. I mean, this year, even our section once you turned, like once you take the turn on Pine going into Ringe, it wasn't bad this year. But last year, oh, it was bad. I mean, there were people getting stuck.
Yeah, yeah,
It got so soft so quick, and it did the same thing this year. I mean, that first thaw just came so fast this year
yeah.
that normally we get a couple, you get the warm days and it freezes at night, so you get a couple hours.
Mhm.
And this, no, I mean, it wasn't refreezing at night, so
Yeah.
it was just kept sinking. But yeah, this year wasn't bad. Like I said, even taking the turn on the Pine, once you got into Ringe, there were some pretty bad soft spots on their side, but our side wasn't bad.
Mm.
So
Yeah, so even having that pavement down helped.
yeah, yeah.
Even Stoll Road this year wasn't that busy, that bad as last year was bad, Stoll wasn't that,
Yeah.
just a couple spots.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's-
Oh, that's good.
Unless you get any questions, I don't think I get any more. Can't think of anything.
About the transfer station? Any update?
Well, the update for transfer station is, as the first of the year now, we have a attendant up there's got a computer which he puts everything in there, so at the end of the day, we have exactly what we have for checks, money wise and cash.
Yeah,
Plus we have, now that we can have a monthly running, how much money is brought in up there. And it's broken down like tires, demo, trash bags, so it's all broken out.
alright,
Last month or so it's been slow, but I think a lot of it had to do with the weather and it started to pick up. We had about $1,000 this weekend, so.
uh-huh. Now, is that computer, is it town owned or is it,
So, I believe the computer's town owned, but the screen is something that Steve, donated.
Neither one was town owned.
Really? Steve?
Yeah.
Donated both those?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Steve Bolo donated, his time, and I actually we loaded the software on this computer as well. And a touch screen, so it's all automated, and, it's quite impressive actually, what he did, and, building this entire application from the ground up. It makes it a lot easier for Carleen to, reconcile the numbers each month. And, we had a couple of hiccups, but I think this week we,
So,
kind of got straightened out. And, it's probably the best accounting we've had about the various activities up there, from, selling landfill, stickers to, trash bags to, the cost of disposing of various items. So I think it'll help us in a lot of ways, cause it's gonna be a good tool to help, guide us as to, where some of our expenses are as well. And hopefully allow us to budget and plan better in, future years. But I don't know how many hours Steve put into it, but it's pretty impressive.
it is, and in the past, at the end of the year, we never knew what we had for total income. It was all thrown in as revenue, town revenues. Now it's broken down, we'll be able to tell the end of this year.
beautiful. If you're out there and back there, Steve, thank you.
I second it.
Yeah, sure.
Him and Rick are two of the best employees that I've had up here so far.
Wow,
Yeah.
excellent to hear.
That's awesome.
All I get is compliments from the public that I hire them, so.
Yeah, them guys are always cheerful up there.
Yep, yeah.
Yep.
Well, then, I guess the question I have for you, maintenance issues on your building. Are there any that we should? I know there's, I know they're far reaching, but,
Well, the biggest thing is the roof.
okay,
I'd like to get started there, and we get some electricity in the cold storage I'd like to look at. And of course, replacing the panels and stuff on the outside, so it looks halfway decent.
Hate to interrupt, I was wondering if they could be decided if we could take credit cards at the dump instead of checks. They already have a machine in the contract for the DM, for the license plates part of it. So maybe we tagged onto that if possible. I mean, it is possible, I just don't know what's exactly what's involved.
Hmm.
But I'm sure it's the only time most of the people that have to use the check is when they come there.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Just something to think about.
alright, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
thank you again, Steve.
You're welcome.
So is
Yeah,
there
we-
something in the works with the roof? Cause my wife is in the Green Center, as you know,
Oh, yeah.
and she's been complaining about that roof for as long as they've been in there.
Well, I've been here 12 years and I've been complaining every year, and never get done.
There's nothing in the works right now to address it.
I have in the past got prices, but that's where
Yeah,
it just got put in the file.
yeah, I mean, Peter and Mark and I talked a little bit about various things, was that today or yesterday? And one of the things, I would like to make that building a priority to get a lot of these things done. You know, we did get quotes on the roof previously, and, you know, it's just kinda languished. I think it's time to get updated quotes from, you know, 2 or 3 vendors, hopefully, if we can get them to respond. And, push forward and just get it done. You know, Mark was up there last week, you know, patching, basically, you know, up there with hot tar, you know, patching where the water was coming through. Rather than continue a Band-Aid approach on that, you know, I think it's time to just get it done. There's plenty, you know, we've got over $300,000 in the capital reserve fund for buildings, and, I'm not sure, what was the last?
The last quote I got was almost $100,000.
Right, about 100,000, so.
That's a complete new roof.
Yes.
Right,
Now, I walked around there the other Saturday. Do you think there's some kind of structural settling going in the back wall there?
Well, there's a possibility, because there's no foundation underneath that building.
I looked at the blocks and it was like,
You talking
And
about
I
where the
know-
highway garages?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
walked, cause I was at the Green Center and I just took a stroll around it. And the facade,
Yeah.
I hear you.
I'm just saying,
But it,
when I put those
Yeah.
2 new doors in the highway garage, we widened it and stuff.
yeah,
When we dug down, I had to add the floor. Well, we ended up taking deteriorated cinder block out.
mm.
Poured like a little footing before we ended up putting the floor back in.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of fellow citizens
Yeah.
have told me maintenance needs to be an issue for you guys with our buildings that we own, and I think, well, I agree,
Yeah.
it does. We gotta
So,
maintain
we-
these things.
We also talked about, and we had discussed it at a previous meeting, about getting Grace Electric in to start to clean up some of the miscellaneous wiring back there that we're not using, probably label things up a little bit, so Mark is gonna reach out to them. We also had a vendor that represents New Hampshire Save in again. She was in yesterday to talk to us about retrofitting LED lighting in this building, and the rebates, in all buildings actually. And the rebates are substantial, where, you know, a high bay unit that we would use in DPW, for example, it's a $150 fixture, and we can get it for 10. And we still have to pay for Grace or somebody to install them. But, so Mark was going around counting up, both here, the fire department and the DPW, for mostly interior, but some exterior fixtures as well, so, because the pricing is such that, I think we'd be foolish not to take advantage of when you can get a fixture for $10, that's gonna cut our electric consumption by, 30 to 40%. Not to mention, you know, more lumens, better visibility. So that's something that, we're gonna, total up, get a proposal on, and get a number in front of you guys, so that, you can approve it hopefully.
Could you
Yeah.
have Mark get, roofing quotes?
Yep, so he actually started pulling out some of the old information he had on roofing, so we'll start moving forward with that as well. And then, once we get kind of the electrical, the lighting, et cetera, you know, we wanna clean up that building. We'd like to do probably the interior painting, just to get a lighter color in there, it'll be safer, and, better visibility for the guys working in the building. And then attack the outside, cause the outside certainly needs some siding work, some soffit work, and, you know, probably a good coat of paint, at least in some areas. And, you know, start to preserve the building, because right now, with it leaking, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
any building that's leaking water is just disintegrating. and, so we need to address that pretty quick.
Yeah.
So if you guys are on board with that, we wanna plow forward and
Yeah, if we could start,
hopefully make,
yeah, get some real numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think, on the 20th of April, we have Doug Wade, Gary Somro coming in. We're gonna review the energy audits that Margaret Dillon did, and Doug is probably gonna have some recommendations there, and I think that kinda ties in with kind of our whole building improvement effort this year. And so hopefully we'll have enough data to make some good decisions and move forward with some of these things.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So what's the, does that just take a vote of the board in order to do the, like, the maintenance on the buildings?
well, you just get the prices first, but then
Yeah,
yes, it's an expendable trust.
Okay,
So it means the board would vote to expend the funds out of that capital reserve fund.
okay,
So that's all it would take, but again, yeah, we have 300,000 approximately in it, but you wanna be careful, only because that's, our heating systems are part of that. So
Yeah.
if we're looking at replacing heating systems, you got heating systems, roof, electrical, you start quickly, you can, when you, if you're talking $100,000 roof, taking a third of it, all of a sudden you gotta start, but it's one of those things, let's start planning ahead on what are the,
yeah, the priorities.
the priorities, yeah. One is probably getting heat in the buildings that are correct.
Yeah,
2 is getting the roof, because like you said, if it's leaking through the roof, then anything you do inside is a waste of time.
yeah,
So it's those pieces, and then you plan ahead so that we can get this completed. And I know it's been many years that this has been going, but we got to look at how many years do we want to take to really complete it. But at least if we start and we have the numbers, you work down that list and you actually get that one done, and you move on to the next building. Or if there's little pieces you can get done in other buildings. But yeah, it's an expendable trust. It just takes a vote of the board.
okay, cool. Yeah, 'cause I would like to see the roof addressed, and I know the heating issues need to be
Yeah,
addressed too, so those are both,
I think
Number
those. I
one
think though,
for
if
me.
we're attacking anything quickly, those are the two to attack, because we're looking at at least 2 heating systems we're going to have to attack before next winter,
mhm.
minimum.
So it'd be good if we get some,
Mhm.
3 good quotes
Yep.
on the roof.
Peter, do you know if them old quotes included new insulation or? They did.
And that's a good point too, cause there was recommendations for roof insulation,
Mhm.
like from the, energy audit
Mhm.
too, so maybe we can, take what she, gave us in that packet and
Yep.
give it to the people quoting the roof.
Well, that, and also, there's some timber that might have to be replaced after they pull the old roof up. Might be so rusted, they might have to replace some.
Yeah.
The nails are so rusty, like the windstorm we had yesterday, you could go up there and see the roof flopping up and down.
Nothing to hold it to.
Say it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one year we had a windstorm rain. As you look in the back, where those 2 doors are facing that way, the one on the left blew the rubber right off the roof, and we had a river going inside the building in that corner.
Yeah.
Sounds desperate to me.
Wow.
Good. Yeah, just sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
on
So
that.
we had 334 coming into this year before we put a deposit in.
Yeah,
I can't remember off the top of my head how much we put in that. Probably the same as the year before. So. But yeah, we had. Probably 35,000 we put in this year again, so
yeah,
that put us up to around $370,000. Of that, we can't use the first 35.
yeah. Okay,
You can never use what you put in that year.
Right.
But that's, so it leaves us 334 that we can, around 330,000. Not that you wanna drain it, but at
No.
least that gives you, what we're looking at.
yeah. I think the townspeople feel good that the money's being
Well,
utilized
again,
instead of sitting in an account.
It's being good stewards of the money and the property they have entrusted us with, so.
Prime example, he was trying to cost you for PD. We tried to build a building like that for Public Works, be 3 times.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, you look at even some of the ones that, who is it, Ringe, was it Ringe that's trying to move this year? Yeah. What was it, $4 million building? Yeah.
I tried back when I worked in Ridge to
Yeah.
get one. That was like 2 million, it's a lot smaller than that building.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, so,
Cool. Do you
Yeah.
have anything else for Peter?
Nope.
Jay? Scott?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Cool, thank you.
All right,
Thanks for
Pete.
coming in, Peter.
have a safe ride home.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any action we had to take on that, point that Jim Coffey brought up last week about road committees?
Not as of right now. What we can do is, like I said, when, basically, I mean, we've talked about it, it's in our notes, so come next election season, we as a board would put together a warrant article
Outlining it.
outline, basically saying, you know, a proposal to dissolve all previous iterations of the road committee and form an official road committee consisting of X, X, and X. You know, of this many people that follow terms of, you know, you know,
Spelled out.
yes,
Yeah.
you spell it out, so, and then, you know, you appoint them, and then you would appoint them for however, you know, so that you have that, you know, have 3-year. So if you want a 3-year term, you'd have 3-year, 2-year, and 1-year people appointed, and then that way people are revolving off or in, and however. But no, there's nothing we have to do today. There's nothing we can do today.
So all the work being done this year has already been decided by the previous
Yes. Yeah.
committee, so
Yeah.
there's no.
There's really nothing. I mean, like I said, it at this point I would have to, and I've driven down Wilson Hill. No offense to, I would have to see something pretty outrageous to take off any of the other roads that we've proposed for this year. Only because, like I said, you know, you look at Mountain View Drive, it's literally falling apart.
Mhm.
I mean, it's falling. The sides are falling in. The end is falling off,
Yeah.
and that's been since the Mother's Day floods. We've just been band-aiding that for several years now. Malt House, it's like driving on a saltine cracker. It's just crumbling. They go down, they patch it. It'll get you through part of the summer. First snowstorm, all that patch ends up in their front yard. The town sweeper's going to go through and clean up. They're not going to clean up their front yard. All that patch
Yeah.
is just crumbled into their front yards, which is the same thing that happens on Mountain View Drive. Obviously, Collins Road is, you know, for safety, is a priority. And then to finish off a road, because you leave them there for too long, especially like I said, if it's the different mix, you know, you're looking at by the time you would go out there, you'd have a crumbling road, so you'd have to tear up what you got. So it would have to be pretty significant. I mean, but
Yeah, and I
But
wasn't
it's-
even
no, but
questioning Wilson Hill at all.
but I'm just, you know, it's one of those things. Yeah, the decisions, they propose it to us. That's what we put forth to the voters.
Yeah.
You know, so like I said, it's at this point I would have to see something if pretty substantial to
Mhm.
change my vote on what roads we would be doing.
Yeah, likewise. I thought the process was pretty good, and
I thought they did a very nice job this year, and so I think going forward, if we continue with the road committee as it is, you know, with the new iteration, and we bring some of these same people back on and pieces like that, I think it's a good process, you know. Yeah. So, and there's always improvements that can be made, you know, where like Jim had an issue with, he didn't feel there was enough public comment.
Mm.
You know, I feel we get public comment year round. And considering the DPW director sits on it, he's the one getting the complaints from people more than anybody else. He's the one out there patching the roads. So he's gonna know which ones are taking more of his patch time, more of his labor time than other ones, so.
Yeah. Now, if you guys don't mind, we got a few minutes before Tim's due to come in.
Yep.
And since we have a couple of school board members, you know, attending this evening,
Yep.
maybe we can,
Touch base?
yeah, touch base on like the SAU overpayment stuff, and
Yeah.
if you don't mind, Rachel.
Sure, I mean,
Alright.
I have some limited information I
Right.
can share.
And we're not looking for answers tonight,
No.
but it's just kind
No,
of,
just,
yeah, no, just, I figured this would serve for, as the,
Yeah.
pre-meeting.
and Mike's on Zoom as well, so.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so like my biggest concern is just how it happened, like, cause, from what I understand, you guys, or the SAU gives us a number to pay, and that's what we do. And there's not much checks and balances on our end that, we can do, like to question the figure, so we rely on you guys for accuracy.
Correct, the DRA gives us the number,
Okay,
and typically our business administrator will send a memo to each respective town with their monthly installments. I have both copies of those memos sent during that time period, and none of those amounts match the amounts that were actually paid, so I'm not sure where you got your figure to pay, but I have the memos that we sent to the towns showing a different amount.
okay,
So again, not trying to place the blame
Yeah.
on either end, there's obviously miscommunication going on. But that's where I'm at with what information I have.
okay.
Yeah, cause it was a little shocking to us to suddenly find out we're three months ahead and getting a rebate.
Oh, absolutely, I was equally dumbfounded when I heard about it, so.
But I mean, I think in the year, from the 2 years ago to last year, I mean, it was a jump of almost $125,000 between the two payments. And, you know, so that was part, I mean, we had this whole thing of, you know, they came to us and wanted a bump in payments. And we said, well, we're not in that cycle yet because, you know, we get, the tax bills come here and here.
Right,
And you wanted to jump here. And like, well, we don't have that money, so it's gonna have to wait till here.
correct,
So whether that made the difference so that, okay, we had to go back and adjust what we had to pay because you wanted that jump for 3 months before we had gotten the money. So there was something, somewhere in there, I think there's the two memos that went out to the towns, but in that time, since we couldn't pay up what you wanted, there was some other adjustment that was sent to us. And whether that was only supposed to be for a short period of time,
gotcha,
and instead we paid it for 9 months.
correct,
So instead of only catching up for 3 months, we paid it for 9 months, and then that put us ahead. But we're not really sure because, like you said, we kind of, it finally came down after we said yes, we can start paying that. We've got the tax money.
mhm.
That's when we started paying. So however that came about
Yeah,
is
I
where.
wasn't aware that we had asked for a different amount at any point. I know that we asked for it to be paid on us by a certain date of the month so we could make payroll. I know
Mhm.
that was a discussion that was had by the former business administrator, but.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in part of this, one of the memos got sent out, you know, end of January of 2020. So if you had some transition in your office and we had transition in our office and then COVID hit, you know, communication may not have been there either when we started getting the wrong payment amount.
Yeah.
You know, that should have been caught on our end too.
Right.
I've addressed that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I say, yeah, so it's, but yeah, and that's really what it is, and you know, communication, making sure that it's right, and if someone catches something that just seems a little off,
Absolutely.
you know, because, yeah. So, and then obviously the question, I think the other question to talk about is, you know, I know the bills we're still hoping that the bills pass up in the state, but if they don't, you know, what kind of impact are you as a board anticipating, and how is that being communicated proactively to the townspeople? because, like, I mean, we had to have a recount on 4 votes. But in the whip switch, your budget passed by 22 votes. Not huge, but still, you know, when you're scraping by and we get to a recount for 3 and you get 22, but people are yelling at us about the tax payments, you know, I want to make sure that as a board, we are going to be very vocal about where this is coming from if taxes go up again, based on that. And I know it's supposed to only be 1 year, but we know how the state works.
Right, they'll keep passing the buck down.
Right. Oh, well, you made it last year, so yeah.
Right, the board made an effort this budget season during deliberative, during our annual report, all those things, to communicate, look, this is what could be a possibility coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we wanna be proactive because nobody likes to get their tax bill in December of next year and shock, you know, sticker shock.
Yeah.
But I agree, we could definitely do better communicating and working together, and that's why I'm here tonight.
It's excellent that you're here.
Yeah.
But please, you know, if you have any questions, we want you to come to that April 19th meeting with getting answers. So if you have specific questions that we can bring documents or whatever, we wanna have them available to you that night, so it's not an issue of, oh, we'll have to get back to you, you know, like,
Yeah.
let's resolve this, let's get down to the bottom of it and move on to working together.
I guess at the same time, is there information something we can help you with, or information we can give you, or support, or anything? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how important it is to figure out where this breakdown in communication came from as far as the payments, but I think going forward, it would be good to have a set process or procedure whether if everything's in writing or followed up in writing, so we have documentation at both ends
Yeah.
of what, if it was a verbal conversation during that time where they were asking for more, I'm not sure if we have a record of that at the SAU end.
Right.
I don't wanna speak for them because I'm not that deeply involved with the business office,
yeah.
but,
Yeah. I don't know, Scott might be able to look back and through old emails and find information so we can see where some of those numbers came from. But no, I mean, I think that's all we've been trying to do recently, is really try to, and Sean's been pushing it harder than any of us, even before he was chair, was to open communication, consistent communication. I think is the biggest thing, because we're open and then we forget about it.
Yeah.
Because it gets pushed off because a bigger issue pops up. So I think if we are able to continue having the ability as the two boards, you know, to have, and not saying that you have to be here at every meeting. That's awesome if you have someone that way. If we have any questions, they can answer here, and then they can take off for the rest of their evening. But I think and same thing for us, if you feel we need to be at a meeting, please let us know.
And I think that's the goal of the 3-member serving switch, to try to rotate who's gonna be attending a meeting, just so we're here if you need us for any reason, to open that communication up, because I agree, we're really two sides of the same coin when it comes down to it. We're all, you know, and we have to be accountable for what we spend, so I think it's important that we have that line of communication open.
That's excellent.
Awesome.
It's
If
nice.
you think of anything in the meanwhile, you can have my email and.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, we'll do that anyways. Like, I'll be point for our board to you, and then you'll know if anything's coming up too, like in our following week's meeting.
Sure.
Yeah. Cool. Did you have anything, Mike?
No, all set. Thank you.
Thanks,
Cool.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for coming, Rachel. Alright, so next update, Mr. Carpenter, Chief Carpenter, do you have
How, besides the issues with staffing, facilities,
Everything's going swimmingly.
perfect. Except, yeah,
start with besides?
yeah. Good. So are you seeing, I guess my question is, with the better weather coming and more people starting to break out of self-isolation, are you seeing any upticks in calls or?
Right now, call volume is still down, it's starting to trend upward a little bit, not noticeable yet. Obviously, give it another month, we'll see what shakes from there, but. Accidents are down, arrests are down, calls for service are down, all from the prior month, right now.
With your expanded facility, I know we put off some of the stuff. Is there anything you need done to better operate in the expanded space you have?
The expanded space is gonna be an annex for storage, things of that nature. The only thing I need to get done, to this point, is just to get the room alarm. That's the only thing I haven't done.
Okay.
Locks have been changed, you know, we'll be moving file cabinets in there shortly. And we'll start moving files in there and other storage.
Okay.
Scott, did Mark get a hold of you at all on the cleaning companies?
He did, yeah, we talked about that yesterday as well, so we have some vendors in mind to take a look at. We may have one other local possibility as well, but we're gonna have to examine that to make sure that it meets the requirements that Tim needs for the police station.
So we could have that next week, maybe, the list of vendors?
Well, I don't know if we'll have any numbers next week, but maybe we'll have some vendors that'll probably need to come out here and take a look at the two spaces, if we're gonna have this building and the police station done, so that they can come up with a cost estimate for us.
And
Would it be worthwhile to just separate the two and just focus on just the police
that-
station?
That could be a possibility.
Cause when I look at that, and I understand it's kinda small potatoes in the
Yeah.
whole, but it's nice to have small potatoes off the table.
Yeah.
So you can deal with the big potatoes, but anyways,
yeah, at least
you know, when I look at a police officer, cleaning the building that he's working in,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it just seems like,
Yeah. And it's
that just shouldn't be,
yeah.
and
And like you said, it's a start. At least we could get started and then add this building, or if we when. But now my question was for the chief though. So the companies, obviously they need to be bonded, things like that.
They need to be bonded, they need to be vetted, for CJIS compliance. That means fingerprinting backgrounds and things of that nature before they're even allowed into my space.
Okay, so now is that something that my point was? Is that something that the company would present us with documentation, or is that something you would do separate?
No, that's something that the company should be doing, and if we're going off the state list, most of those companies that are on that state list have already been through that process, but they need to be able to show us documentation that whoever is going to be there has been through that process.
Okay.
If they have not been through that process, they don't go through the door.
So you know if that's
Just
what
because of the
Mark's working
information
off
we
of,
do.
that state
Perfect.
list, or
Yes,
Okay.
that's what he'll be working on.
Yeah, the reason I asked, we do the same thing, like, my company, we have to do that, and we do it separate from the school, but if the school asks, we're able to present all that documentation that they've gone through.
Yeah, and we should be able to present the names of the people that would be in that space doing that job and be able to provide, their certification on those individuals.
would you
And
mind?
that's something that should be coming out of general buildings, that should not be coming out of individual budgets, whether it's this building or my building, that should be coming out of general buildings.
Yeah, no, we actually have a custodial line built, so whether we'd have to, at some point that line would have to be adjusted. But yeah, no, I would see that coming out of that custodial line item that's currently built in.
Now, do you think it'd be, like, for something like this that's kinda like lingered on for a while? Do you mind, like, putting on, like, a timeline for it, so it doesn't continue to get kind of pushed?
Well, I'm hoping that, let's call it 2 weeks from today, maybe we'll have an idea of some quotes and pricing.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, we'd asked, Peter, I know there's a lot of maintenance type things and, more so with the DPW garage, but we asked Peter that question, if there was anything that he saw that needed to be addressed. Was there anything that you felt needed to be addressed with the
Within
police
the
department?
building.
Yeah, within the building,
It's a lease space.
yeah,
It's all bound by the lease agreement, so at this point, we're just one foot in front of the other, we just keep going.
okay, cause
There's
we do have
nothing-
flexibility with them, like they've said that, so, like, we're able to make improvements or adjustments to the building. So it's not like our hands are tied, like they're not saying that we can't do anything with the building.
Right, and I fully understand that, but
Mhm.
again, we've been there since 2008. You put, throwing wheels on a dump truck, you still have a dump truck. So
Okay.
there's not a whole lot we're gonna do with the building, it's operational, it's functional for what it can be. Without major upgrades, there's nothing else we can do with it.
I would ask if there is something that comes up, I mean, even if it's something that's floor tiles are coming up or something like that, and there's something needs to be done, just let us know so we can make sure. I mean, yes, we understand it's a space and it is what it is, but, we also wanna make sure that it's safe for you, tripping hazards, things like that. Let's at least,
We have more important issues to worry about than tripping hazards.
yeah, but at the same point, it would be really awful to have an officer go down because you tripped over a broken tile or something. Instead of,
Well, we do have a number of those in the locker room, just so you are aware.
Okay.
So, that was also part of that bid, I believe,
Yeah.
that was presented, that was turned down,
Yeah.
so.
But, we might be able to figure out a way to at least get some new stick tiles or something in there.
Well, we actually found, probably half a dozen or so, stick-on tiles. The problem with those is that they're considerably thinner than the old ceramic tiles that are in there.
Okay.
So, unless you're gonna stack 2 or 3 of them up
Yeah.
to make the same thickness, here's what it is.
Okay, so, but we could probably still figure something out if, cause if there's broken tiles, and I know it sounds silly, but to lose an officer cause you tripped over a tile would be, a little, that's a complete kick in the balls when you're trying to deal with everything else you're dealing with.
Understood?
My understanding of like those other requested, building upgrades or space alterations that you had requested, wasn't that it was turned down necessarily, it was just looking at it from a different perspective, not putting it on Jeff's plate, and then just having each one looked at on our own.
I'd
So-
like to see a copy of that
Okay.
at some point, if I could get that.
The lease or the improvements in?
No, the suggested improvements,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Cause if you still would like those addressed, we can start that process of, having getting quotes.
It's not on top of my priority list.
Okay. Is there anything that we can do to better support you, like from the board?
Not at this point.
I think he did outline a few things as far as the hiring process
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
that pay
which,
schedule, insurance stipends,
yeah, which is
sign-on
something,
bonuses.
yeah, that's definitely,
and
Yeah, and I think some of those are easily addressable compared to other ones, but like I honestly believe, I think the insurance stipend piece is an easy one to look at. You know, that's my opinion, you know,
But that's only one issue, and as I outlined in the email,
yeah.
that's not the primary. The
Right.
primary is the first one I had listed, and that's coming from individuals that I have spoken to personally. And that's the first question that comes out of their mouth. So if we can't address that, and we already know the issues,
And refresh my memory,
that stem
that,
around that,
was that pay scale?
yep,
Yeah, like an actual
step and
step scale.
And in this climate, to be quite honest, there's no guarantees, even if you were to put all three of those recommendations in play now, that would guarantee a full-time officer to hire.
Yeah. Now, is there any, can you give an example of a pay scale? Cause I have no knowledge of how that works, or I don't have it
I've got
in my
an old
job.
one that I can forward to you.
Okay. Just to give us an idea of what would work.
Or at least something to start with.
Yeah.
And then should this be put on an agenda for a meeting for us to go over these three items for?
I believe so, but I think we need some more guidance from you, Tim, on each of those issues of, like, specifically what would be adequate at this point.
Well, I think, I mean, that's it, but I mean, the insurance stipend one, that's, I mean, it's one of those things, if they, like, for me, my insurance is through my spouse.
Yeah.
But that's never comes into account when I go to work. You know, they go, oh, well, we offer, you know, insurance. I said, well, how much is paid by the employer on say a single plan? And they go, well, X amount. Okay, so you take a single plan is $10,000, and they pay, 40% of that.
Yeah.
You know, so if the person isn't going to take insurance through us, we should be able to offer that $4,000 as a increase in their pay over the year's time.
Alright.
Is that, well, that, it
And
would
that's
work,
how that works, exactly.
but it would be considered a stipend, that wouldn't be a part of
It'd
their.
be part of their pay. So they would get, so if they were normally would have come in at 54,000,
Mhm.
they would go in at 58,000.
Yeah.
So, but you have to decide, like, it's one of those things, like, basically you would say, okay, but we're not gonna pay it on a family plan. You basically go, if you don't
Right.
take insurance, we pay all stipends into your pay based on a single plan.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
Something of that nature.
right. So that's how that works, and there are employers that do it, mine doesn't, but there are many employers that do that, because in the long run, it actually does save them money,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But and it's the same thing, there's a form you sign when you turn away the insurance, just like anything else. If you're insured by another form, you have to fill that out.
Mhm.
And it just guarantees that, no, you're insured, because that doesn't mean, you go out with a hangnail and you can't work for 3 weeks because you don't have insurance,
Yeah.
but that's the way that works, and there are many places that do that.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess where I'm coming from is just needing more specifics from you, because I don't know where to go
Well, I think
on those
Quite
things.
frankly, that's an HR function, those are policies developed within the town. I would think that, the town administrator could go on listserv and go out to everyone in the state and get those policies. Because there are a multitude of them out there.
Alright, but I just wanna make sure we're going down the right road and not perpetuating issues. And I feel like some of the things that we've done, like I always hear that it's not good enough. And I just wanna make sure we're doing what's good enough, like in your opinion, like for your department. So that's why I'm looking for, I was trying to give you the opportunity to, you know, help guide that conversation a bit more.
Well, that guide is gonna come from those policies that already exist.
Okay,
We shouldn't be out there reinventing the wheel, which no municipality really does. They use a smattering from everybody else, put it together, that's how policies are generated.
mm-hmm. We can look into that, Scott, as priority number one.
You just gave him 2 priority number ones in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, there's lots of priority number ones, but we gotta start knocking some of this stuff out and moving forward.
Alrighty, how's the new officer working out?
Going well. We just got the paperwork back from the academy. He goes for his PT test on April 19th at the academy at 8 o'clock in the morning. He passes that, then he'll be put into the next class, which will start May 3rd and conclude sometime in August.
Excellent.
So
And is your cruiser finally working consistently?
they are. We have no cruiser issues at this time.
And do we have both the new ones now? Nice.
So Sean, when you say priority number one, are you saying we should have something to look at next week regarding employee hires?
I think an
Or just some
appropriate
kind of a
timeline would
policy
be.
Well, I can certainly have something to you electronically. I'm not gonna be here next week,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know whether you wanna have a meeting or just kick it till the following week.
But you'll have some, like, you feel that you could have something within a week's
Well,
time
it-
to, like, for us to review, at least look at over email?
Sure,
Okay,
that shouldn't be hard to do.
okay, thank you.
Even if it's links to website, you know, something just to get the,
I don't have anything else for Tim. Do you guys?
Jay, anything?
Nope.
Scott?
Nope, and I just, sent the three of you the quote we got from Jeff Mahona and scope of work,
oh,
so.
Okay,
alright,
thank you.
Yep.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you,
Chief?
Tim.
Have a
All
good
set.
night.
You
Thank
too.
you for
Drive
coming in.
safely.
Good night.
Thank you for coming back and
Take care.
you too. Yeah, I'll be honest, I think in the just my opinion, in the big scheme of the three that he put on there, I think the biggest one, the hardest one to do anything with would be the sign-on bonuses. I think
Yeah.
those are that's gonna be a tough thing. I mean, you could do it on a year when you haven't spent money. You know, oh, we've been down an officer for X amount, yeah, you could probably come up, but to try to budget a sign-on bonus is tough, cause you could lose an officer in the middle of the year and not have enough for what you've claimed to be a sign-on bonus, you know? So you'd be budgeting for something you'd never spend, that's a tough one. The other ones I think are easily budgetable, because you'd already know where the people are falling in each year,
Yeah,
you know? And the only issue you'd have is if your budget doesn't. But if they sign a contract, then the step bonus is part of a contract, and then it goes into a default part of the budget. So
This
that's,
is, in my discussion with the chief, that's what he was saying, that's
Yeah.
how a lot of departments are using that sign-on bonus as part of a contract.
Right.
And they spread that bonus out
yeah,
in, the first 3 to 5 years. And
Yeah.
that way there's motivation for the officer.
yeah. And then, like you
Stick
said, then the
that
scale, the step scale could also be something that's part of a signed contract. So as part of a signed contract, it can be included in a default budget, cause it's a legal contract.
mm-hmm,
So even if a budget didn't pass, a step scale contract would be included.
okay,
Where, right now, if we say, you know, cause I read a thing like all increases have to be approved, so if the budget doesn't get approved, we can't even give, say, 3% raises.
Yeah.
Everyone stays flat, but a signed legal contract, like a police contract for employment or service, would fall into that. So it would cover us for something like that.
Okay.
So it's something to think about when we're thinking about this, going, oh, well, what if the budget doesn't pass? It doesn't matter, it's a signed contract.
Yeah.
We in our town have gone to a contract with the person, and in those, you can put in things like, you know, you can't leave me on, you can't give a 2-week notice, you gotta give me a 90-day notice or a 30-day notice, or there's a penalty.
Yeah.
You know, so those contracts can be written that it benefits a town as well as the officer and keeps us better employed.
So for our officers, we don't currently have contracts besides just the repayment schedule if they leave.
I believe that's correct, or in the writing, there's nothing else in there, because we don't have it, like I said, we don't have a step scale
Yeah.
built in. I don't know, I don't think we have anything in there about, like, the only thing we have as far as their employment is that if you know, you come in, you work for us for this amount of time, if you leave, you know, earlier than that, then you have to pay back X amount.
Yeah.
Things like that. Thank you, Rachel.
Good night.
So those are the things that you know, so I would say I have no issue with some of those things, but I think in doing that, it also gives us the opportunity to look at those contracts and make them beneficial for us, not just for the officer,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it should be
Equal,
for
right,
both.
and that's
I mean,
and that's
any
it.
business agreement.
Right, but right now, I don't think our contracts, I mean, we have good benefits, things like that, you know, but I think right now, I agree with the chief, in a, you know, if you sign on and there's no step, you know, you're hoping each year that you're crossing your fingers, what am I gonna get? What am I gonna get? Where if you know that you have a step, then it's pretty straightforward.
Now, what is that step?
So it means like, okay, you know, like
Like
he
they're
was sending us, you know, he said it's okay, you know, on average, a 3-year officer is this, a 5-year officer is this, a 10-year officer is this.
Yeah.
So you can actually put that in.
Like
That-
getting them to that point.
It's basically raises for time served.
Right. So
That's
you
what
would-
it
yeah.
is.
Could
So
you-
that an officer could look at it and say, well, I'm gonna start out at this rate, and in 6 years, I'm guaranteed I'm gonna be making this much.
Right. At least that, it's
if,
very,
if you do, because there's training that goes along with that. So there's like assumed training of what you're going to get in a 3 to 5 year officer over.
It might
Correct.
get tricky writing it up
right,
for
but
law
that's it, like you
enforcement,
said,
I don't know.
but the thing
Yeah.
is you can probably pull some of, similar contracts from, whether it be the state, you know, there's contracts written and there's steps that are there. So it's one of the, you know, an officer having worked 3 years, having met these training requirements, you know,
Yeah.
is suitable for, you know, who has done this many hours of personal development, you know, is eligible for this step after 3 years,
Yeah.
is eligible for this step after 5 years.
And it is, I think it's kind of foreign to most people in this town because there's not many people who work in unions and are used to that kind of a thing. It's always just merit-based and
Yeah.
experience and period. But, you know, in talking with the chief, it's like, you can have that kind of feeling if you want, but the reality is, trying to hire a police officer right now, this comes into play. It's almost like the same reality that it's $40 a sheet for a piece of plywood right now. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's a thing, and in reality, a lot of government, you know, type jobs have that, specifically union, or the ability, you know, what in places would be union. So like police, it happens a lot. Teachers, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
You know, but you look at it, most places, if you probably see it, both of you probably seen it in union labor, you know, electricians, things like that. If they're in the union, you know, sometimes they can't charge less than a certain amount
Yeah.
because the union won't let them.
Well, yeah, we have a job in the middle of April that we're going on that it all has to be like rate works, all my guys have to be like at that rate, and
Yeah.
they actually have auditors come through and just talk to everybody, like, to make sure that you're not abusing that
Yeah.
system, so.
And that's one of the things that when we talked about, to people understand too, that like when we talked about building the police station, they said, well, are there certain government grants and stuff? Well, that's what happened at the school. So you get government grants, the government puts their money in, they tell you the minimum dollar amount that you can pay.
Right, prevailing wage.
Yeah,
I remember
prevailing
that,
wage.
yeah.
So what happens is you would have had people in this town who bid here, but then you got the government grant and they say, no, you have to pay this.
Yeah,
So you have no choice.
You
Yeah.
gotta look at the strings.
Right. So but it's one of those things, and that's prevailing wage is all run by, that's union.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I think I agree with the chief where it's one of those pieces for a guy to come in and say, okay, well, where am I going to be in 5 years? Well, I don't know. What do you mean? Well, sometimes you get 3% raises, sometimes you get nothing. And if they're feeling good about it, we'll get a wage adjustment.
And that's just the way it is for most people in this town.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality most people
yeah,
are getting.
yeah,
But
and I think that's
it
why
may
we've
not be
tried
the
to
reality here.
to
And
keep it so that we have more control over our budget instead of just, so it's like limiting the things that are forcing the budget to go up.
it's a balancing act
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. And when I look at it, and granted, I've only been here, not even a month. But when I look at the situation, it's very much fine line here because from what I understand, every community around us is trying to hire an officer, and they're going after each other,
Yeah, they're poaching
picking
from each other.
out of departments, and at some point you got to be careful if you get into a bidding war. I mean,
Yeah,
so there's this, and I'm not saying we shouldn't try. I'm just saying there's a bit to consider. You don't want to jump
Yeah.
full board on.
Yeah, and then like you said, you get into a bidding war, and we can't outbid Hollis, we can't outbid Hudson, we can't outbid Bedford.
So you're back to the same. The fact is,
Right.
that's just the fact.
And then what you end up with, unfortunately, is you end up with a situation where you are now, where you're running on a reduced staff, which then your officers are tired, they're beat up,
Yeah.
and then what if something happens and you're sending a tired, beat up police officer out to
With
with
low morale.
yeah,
and
into a stressful situation, and so I understand what you're saying, Sean, where we have control, but at the same point, we would know exactly what's coming up.
Mhm.
Like hey, who do we have on staff? Are they going up a step? No. Okay, so are you looking for, are they worthy of a 2%? You get some recommendations and the chief gives you that. But the next step isn't going to be this plus what they would have gotten from this step to this step.
Yeah,
If they're ready for a step, they go up to the step.
yeah,
Whether that step becomes a 5% or 1%, you can bring them up to that step.
yeah,
You don't have to go, well, the step from where he was would have been $6,000 or $5,000 in a year. And I brought him up 2,000 last year. I don't need to add 5,000 to that. I'm only adding 3,000
mhm,
because that's where the steps come in.
yeah,
And a lot of times what you'll have in certain situations is when they reach bigger milestones, they may have a larger step, but you don't have to do that. You can make it very even steps throughout the whole piece. Year 1, year 3, year 5, year 7, and then in between that, if you so choose, you can try to, put it out there to the
Yeah.
voters at that point. Oh, we want to give them 1% or 2% because cost of living's going up. Gas is at $4 a gallon. He was hired.
so it's
when
like
it
those
was
steps would replace the
$2.50. These crazy
the
adjustments.
annual, or, yeah,
Basically, the steps would replace these crazy adjustments we're doing in order to try to catch them up.
yeah,
provided that our steps
Yeah.
are in line with the other communities.
Well, at least, but I think even if they're not in line, I think if people know that the steps are available.
That in
and there's
itself is a selling
Yeah,
point.
it's-
because
it's open,
some kind
it's
of
honest.
stability. Yeah.
Open communication. I know what I'm getting into when I walk in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the steps that are available.
So,
And honestly, that affects all the employees, not just the police.
Yep.
You know, we had a system that we used in Wilton that I thought was simple but fair. It, you know, we had a matrix that was set up based on somebody's years of service. And, obviously their job category, you know, we had the jobs ranked from 1 through, you know, levels 1 through 15. And based on a combination of their years of service and their merit, based on their performance, would determine how big their raise was. And you had a defined range, so you had a maximum too. So if you've been there enough years, you're at the max, guess what? You're not getting a COLA, you're not getting a merit.
You're
You've
maxed.
maxed out your job.
Yeah.
Until there's a, you know, every so many years, you have to do a complete overhaul of your matrix based on market conditions. And that might be the next time you get your raise, is when there's a complete
Yeah.
analysis of all job categories, again, whether that's 5 years down the road or whatever it may be. It worked out really well, because people had some level of expectation of, you know, what that line of, you know, minimum to maximum for their job, and they could take a look at it based on their years of experience, and it gave them an incentive to perform. Because the better they perform, the faster they would kind of go up that track. And it wasn't overly complicated. You know, some towns do step, grade, this, that, and, you know, everyone's guaranteed this much of a percentage every year. It wasn't that complicated, it wasn't that, you know, hard and fast type of situation.
Is that something you could get us?
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think,
I think I've got it in that folder right there.
yeah, cause I mean, cause then it combines,
Yeah.
like you said, but it's not, but at least you could look at it, like you said, someone sits down, that's in their day one folder.
Right.
Here you go.
So
Yeah.
the challenge for us to implement something like that would be to come up with those levels for each job. And, you know, determine what the appropriate salary range is based on market conditions. Now, I have some data in my folder there that we got last year during budget season. There was a Municipal Resources Incorporated did a 15-town comparison for Wyndham, so mostly southern New Hampshire towns. And so that is a place to kind of start to look at, you know, how other towns are compensating.
And I look at it as I don't think it's something, I think it's something that within, say, 5 years, you get everybody in town on that matrix.
Yeah.
But I think it's something you could start with one department, move to the next department.
Yeah.
So by the time you're done, you're like, okay, we're all on this and we're going.
Yeah.
But start with the ones that we're really struggling more with.
Because if you try to push a big thing
No,
all
I
at once,
No, I think-
generally it's going to take 10 times as long
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
meet 10 times the resistance.
Yeah.
And a lot more issues.
Right.
Like if there's one little issue.
Yeah, so I think if
It's
it's something you
something
could
to
start
think
with a
about.
small department and then
It's-
move to the next one and move to the next, but I think I agree, I look at it as if we're gonna do it with one department, I think you start with one and then eventually you get everybody on it. It just makes it easy for everybody.
It's a strange thing.
Yeah.
Coming from the private sector, it's a
Yeah.
strange thing to me. I mean, all my life it's been, you work hard, you get paid, work, you know, and then life happens, and there is no work for anyone, and you're just
And
flat
every day-
out broke.
And every day
you-
has different value.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's,
well, I mean,
so
it-
it
yeah.
is a little bit.
In my
But
company, it's
if
one-
that's
in
what
my
it
company, they
takes.
do it, it's more or less based on the size of the districts that you work in. So you could be with a company for 20 years
Mhm.
if you've only ever overseen one school. Well, you're going to be at this level. But if you're overseeing 4 schools and you've been there 10 years, you may very well be paid more than the person who's there 20 years because you're overseeing 4 schools. Ours is based on the size of the district, you know,
So
that
it's
kind of
like
thing.
the amount of responsibility.
Responsibility,
right
yeah.
now. So there's a. It
But
sounds like there
again,
are
they pretty
many
much,
ways
yeah,
to look at
but they
it.
pretty much know, okay, this is the level, like if that's where you're gonna stay, yeah, you're gonna ceiling out in 2 years.
But, and who knows, maybe we look at the matrix and we say this would be easy to implement.
Yeah.
Or across the board.
Yeah.
But I think it's something we need to do.
Yeah, it almost be worthwhile to keep this on the agenda,
Yeah, kind of,
even just listed there
yeah.
every
just-
week.
Yeah,
so
just
that
keep
we,
it as a,
yeah,
talk more about. 'cause,
high
yeah,
priority.
you know, make it,
So many priorities.
Just to close that with the police, you know, I've had a few discussions with the chief. I know you guys have had way more than I have. But it does seem like it's a priority. And we're in a, I don't know.
we're in a tough,
There's a lot of work.
yeah,
be
and
done.
we're in a tough market, like you said, I mean,
Yeah.
we're in New Ipswich, we're surrounded by, you know, Jaffrey, Peterborough, Ringe, Temple, whatever. But in all reality, we're competing with Nashua
No, it's
and
true.
Manchester.
And then not only that, all of this stuff going on from federal level, I mean,
Yeah,
the things that they're putting up with,
yeah,
it's a tough.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we can do what we can do.
place. We can try
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I said earlier. I mean, the more small potatoes you get off that table,
yeah,
it helps with the morale.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think I'm glad you brought up the fixing the buildings, because I mean, there's so many big potatoes on the table,
Right.
even outside of the town that they're dealing with. Yeah, the tile, get it fixed.
Right. Is if it's broken, okay, let's find out. Let's go in there and
Because if you
cut
if-
some tiles or get
if
somebody
you're-
in there and
yeah, if you're in a bad mood, I mean, everything starts to.
yeah, and then you trip. Yeah, and then
it's
you
not good.
boot catches a stupid broken
But
ceramic tile, and it's
even just morale wise, like, and I work in a dump.
yeah,
Well,
You know what I mean?
that's why I was trying to get more, like even just on those improvements too, just
Well, that's
'Cause I'd like to see those addressed, yeah,
We have
yeah.
a list, and so
Yeah.
whatever.
we start
That was all I had to say on.
knocking that out too.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
so we got a little old and new business.
So first I wanted to start with the HB 111 letters that I drafted. It's the same letter to both Paul and Diane. And I wanted to make it brief and to the point, because if you make it too long, nobody's gonna take the time to read it.
Right.
They're going back in session next week, so I'd like to get this to them before then. If you like the way it's written, I can have you sign. I've got a copy here for all of you to sign,
I was good with both of them.
and I can, express mail them or FedEx them to each of them, so they'll have them before the end of the week.
I thought they were well written as well. I just had one correction, and it was just on the end of the third sentence, liability even it situations just should be in.
Even in situations.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I ran this through spelling and grammar check, and it's still,
Right there.
so that should be in.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's all I could find, but yeah, I thought it,
all right.
hit everything. It wasn't too aggressive, but definitely got the point across, and I liked it. Do you have any comments, Jay?
No, I agree with what he's.
Okay.
It's right to the point.
Let me make those couple of changes. Print out, let's see.
So I took some time and looked at the sponsors of HB 111.
Yeah.
Predominantly Democrat. The defund the police movement. That's the
Motivation.
motivation.
Right.
That's the understanding I got as well.
Yeah, I looked at
When I looked
where
at it,
and what where they're from, their age, like their socioeconomic background, right? And
So it wasn't like a bigger picture, just looking at like trying to force the conversation and
No,
looking at our whole
it's
system. It was
part of the defund the
yeah.
police movement.
Yeah.
Most of them, I mean, not trying to profile, but they were.
Well, last week was the Libertarians. This week will be the Democrats.
Well, it's all in the same movement. Like
Yeah,
one of them's looking
yeah.
for smaller government ones, but it's you look at where they went to school.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them West Coast schools. So
Yeah.
it's but yeah, I looked at it predominantly a Democrat sponsored. In fact, a lot of the ones we looked at last week were a lot of predominantly Democrat sponsored bills, the ones that were going after or in some way would affect public safety in some
Mhm.
way, manner, or form. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what they're trying. They're make them more responsible, but I mean, they're still responsible. They can still be taken to court. So, but
All right, these are two corrected copies, one for Paul, one for John.
Over to John.
John first?
Yeah.
that way you just walk,
Around.
not
Alrighty.
pass them around.
Thank you for taking the time to do this, Scott.
Oh, no problem. It's an important
Yeah.
issue.
For sure.
All right, the other thing, I had a conversation with Carrie today regarding welfare,
Mm-hmm.
and they're starting to see an uptick in demand for housing. And it's not just here, she supports other towns as well. And it's a situation that's hopefully, we're not gonna see a trend in that direction for a long period of time. But we just don't know whether it's, kind of a cumulative effect of COVID and people being out of work or having reduced work that's causing this situation. One of the things, she needs to use my credit card from time to time to, rent rooms, for people that are displaced. And the thought was that perhaps, since she is effectively a department head, is to get her a credit card of her own. And just add her to our account, give her, we talked about limits. She thought a $3,000 limit would be enough. We just did one today for somebody that was, over $500. So, it seems to make sense to give her her own card for that purpose, so that if I'm out around for some reason, she's not stuck, not being able to arrange for, housing for somebody.
I'm fine with that. The question I had, and I believe it was prior to you, I know, and it could be one of those ones that we started and unfortunately got buried in the transition, but we had come up with a credit card policy.
We do have a policy that was written just prior to me getting here.
Okay. I just want to, because if it's completed, I think I'm fine with making those decisions as long as they sign that policy, so that we're not, if it had been instituted. I can't remember. Like I said,
Yeah, I wonder how the tracking of that would take place. Would it be lumped in with?
So right now, the people who have cards are me, Tim, Peter, Meredith. And so we each get our own statements, but we also
okay.
get a cumulative statement.
Yeah.
So that, I can look at, and Roger can look at all the charges for all the cards every month.
And then it's laid out in.
yeah, and that's why you'll see some where they're all, suddenly you get a bunch of them that look like they were due on the same date. It's because they're actually all on that one credit card statement.
Right, so Roger breaks it out, charges it to the appropriate account number, and then he pays the entire bill, every month. So, the typical corporate card type of arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I don't think adding her would, you know, be too much trouble. I'll find out when I call Citizens Bank, but, I don't think adding another card with a $3,000 line, would be difficult, and, again, it would get all rolled up into our monthly statement that we all see anyway.
Okay.
Motion to, get a $3,000 limit credit card issued for our welfare officer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alrighty. Let's see, did, get the truck ordered, at least quasi-ordered, because they still have to wait for the 2022, ordering, system to open up. They don't have, that quite done yet. We already talked about the LED lighting for the facilities here, earlier. I sent you the septage agreement with the town of Jaffrey earlier. I don't know if you had a
I
chance to
didn't
see
have
it.
a chance to review it myself.
But, basically, the, DES requires Jaffrey to have an agreement with the towns that they accept, septage from.
Yeah.
And I was actually kinda surprised, to give you an idea of the volume that we did. So in 2020, Jaffrey accepted 665,000 gallons of New Ipswich septage, from the various, you know, private carriers that pump systems here and take it over there to be processed. A total of 456 different addresses were, contributing to that. So it's pretty significant, volume that, goes over to Jaffrey for. So this agreement apparently, was a 3-year agreement that went from 2014, expired in 2017, and kind of got lost in the shuffle. And Jaffrey didn't realize it until DES called them and said, hey, you need to have this agreement in place with New Ipswich. So they didn't change the wording of the agreement. This is just renewing exactly the way it was before. You know, we just need to get this, signed off and back to them. There is no cost to us as a town because the individual homeowners or businesses.
Yeah, they pay for it when they pay for the septic service.
Right.
Was that the previous one?
Yeah, this is the previous one. If you want the whole package,
Yeah.
you can pass that right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And with the truck for the DPW, after we had approved that, I didn't realize that Peter had a preference of vehicle. And it was for, you know, service reasons, you know, cause everything kinda goes through, like he has a good system for
Yeah.
service right now,
Yeah.
or it feels like. What's our, like, flexibility in, like, weighting something like that, like if he had a recommendation or what he would prefer, cause it wasn't the cheapest, you know, like it was.
No, his preference was the Ford.
Yeah.
And the Ford was $2,500 to $3,000 more than the Ram,
Yeah,
with the same specifications, basically. You know, we configured the trucks the same as much as you can between manufacturers. And, so, you know, apples to apples, you know, we presented you the numbers, you voted to go with the, lowest price truck, and while I understand.
well, I just, like, for
Yeah.
decisions going forward, cause
Yeah.
again, it was another one of those things that, you know, a couple days later, making the call to check in with them, see if there's anything, and we talked about the truck, and I thought it'd be a good feeling phone call, but it was, well, you missed that's great, but you missed the mark, you know, so it's kinda,
But have,
I just
have
wanted
they
to-
had Dodge trucks before?
I don't know that.
And is this the issue that they're, have a different
Well, he feels like he
model?
has to go further for service,
Will he?
potentially.
You
the
never
Ford
know,
dealers
he
are
may like
closer.
it better.
No.
So,
I'm not, Jay.
yeah, so.
Yeah,
So I just
No.
like looking, like, to take those recommendations into account.
Well, I think, you know, honestly, I think, if we had a larger fleet, you know, standardizing on one manufacturer starts to make sense. And honestly, if we had a larger fleet, you start to get fleet rebates if you have a certain volume of a specific brand or a vehicle.
Yeah.
We're just not in that situation. And honestly, you know, other than preference, I don't honestly see what the big difference is between, so now, you know, we do a lot of our own maintenance work here, but, so you buy a different air filter or oil filter for the new truck, and that can happen just from year to year in Ford, right?
Yeah.
So, you
But-
know, Ford comes out with a new version, and guess what? The oil filter and the air filter and, you know, don't fit the last generation. It's a new generation, so
Sanel delivers, so
right,
Yeah.
you know.
he's not driving anywhere, you know, and
I
as
think
far
it's
as,
more for like the, you know, putting it out for service if there's issues,
So,
bigger issues.
so
But-
But, and this isn't for me to speak on, like,
Right.
it was more
Mhm.
yeah,
like
like
for
I
him,
said,
so I don't
if
have all
there
the
were-
answers of why.
so basically what you're saying is kinda like on our ballots where it says recommended by. You'd like to see that from department head. Preference is
Yeah, and, you know,
whatever
why.
the purchase.
But,
Yeah.
but again, I mean, is that, you know, I look at it as, you know, $3,000, I mean, hopefully, I mean, it's gonna be in, under warranty for X amount of years based on certain things, and, you know, $3,000, that could be the next big service call it has to have, you
and,
Yeah.
know?
and honestly, you know, we got a quote on the GMC, we got a quote on the Ford, we got a quote on, the Ram. So we got the three major vendors, you know, in the business to, you know, provide us a quote, and, you know, I can't honestly say I've heard a bad thing about any of those trucks.
That's it.
You know, it's not like one has a history of being more problematic than the other.
Yeah,
And, you know, I'm not, you know, how you wanna weigh that, like I said, if we had a justification because of, you know, a service issue or the way we stocked, you know, maintenance parts or something like that, I mean, you know, we're buying it from Hillsborough, but, you know, that doesn't mean we have to take it to Hillsborough for service. There's, you know, there's Contemporary right in Milford,
yeah,
which is, you know, 20 minutes away.
Right.
So it's not like there's, you know, there aren't, you know, other.
yeah, no, there's just that other issue,
Yeah.
like, I just,
I mean, if
for
we,
me,
you know, if
would
this were a
like to
case where we
know,
had to go to
yeah.
Connecticut for service,
yeah,
you know, that would
Yeah.
be, you know, that'd be a different story, but, you know, honestly, you know, we're finding with that, the, Doosan loader that we purchased, that, because that's a newer brand to this country, even though they own Bobcat now, they're finding that getting maintenance, and filters for the Doosan is difficult. You almost have to order them direct from Doosan.
yeah,
So, in certain situations, I agree that it can be an issue and should be taken into consideration. And, but overall, you know, we're buying a tool.
Mhm.
And if the tool we're buying meets all the specs that we laid out, and it's less money, and everything else about it the same, the warranty coverage, whatever it may be, then why wouldn't you go with the least expensive solution?
Like I
Okay.
said, you know, whether he's taking it down to Townsend Ford or taking it over to Contemporary in
Right.
Wilton, there's minimal difference in time.
Right.
And I know that, or at least 2 years ago, the head mechanic over at Contemporary was a Messinic graduate.
Yeah.
Graduated from Messinic and started his training at our automotive program.
So, you know.
So we'd be supporting a local kid.
Yeah, yeah. That works.
Last you knew anyway.
Yeah.
Those are all set.
This is like 3 different dates on it, but I know it's not the 31st yet.
Well, he's gonna send it tomorrow. That is
Yeah.
the 31st.
So,
Today's the 30th?
Yeah.
I started that date.
well, that's okay. I don't think, honestly, if there's a
Yeah. I know, it doesn't
the
matter, it's just
signatures
funny.
is gonna make a difference for us.
I have this time travel thing down pat.
It is. I'm back from the future.
So, let's see, the only other thing I had, I sent out an email earlier on the whole Kennebec Court situation. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that.
You know, I do have some concerns there. Rick has some concerns there at this point. That's why he's not doing any additional inspections, issuing any additional building permits until some of these other issues with the planning board get resolved. I'm gonna plan on being on the Zoom meeting with the planning board tomorrow night and see if we can start to address some of those issues. And honestly, you know, in the RSA, any subdivision that sits idle for as long as that one did really should have gone through another subdivision review.
I think that's where some of the question, because you were in that meeting with Dee when they were trying to pour through everything, it was like, what constitutes idle? Like, just because that part, because the whole thing really looked like a whole subdivision, and like the last house of this other part of it just got completed, so
Well,
there has been work.
so, and the question is that still all part of the same subdivision? You know, how was it initially approved? And I don't know that the planning board knows those answers. But even if there was some work done, if you read the RSA, it really should have, before any movement was allowed, all of those issues, including the road bond piece of it, should have been settled and documented before the first building permit
Yeah.
was issued.
Because that's what gets me, is that if there was any sort of subdivision started, there should have already been a road bond as part of the planning
Correct,
board's initial sign-off.
right.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm wondering, is this part of the same subdivision? Because based on the name, Andy Crook did not start that subdivision.
No, and it's interesting, like, to say the least, when you start going back all of the years. I almost want to say it's 20 years worth
It's
of
just about.
yeah, like from conversation to each piece kind
Yeah.
of starting, and then with all the information that we have, there's massive missing gaps, like where we're trying to fill in, like, well, this doesn't seem right, and then you have all these different board turnovers, planning board, select board, and just trying to track all this stuff down.
Which to me goes back to the other email we had this week with the checklists.
Mhm.
And again, what I sent to you was that's not new.
Yeah,
Over a year ago, we sat and talked about that with Rick. Basically, he said he had some sort of form. We're like, well, let's see it, because it only makes sense that if you start, okay, who do you have to start with? Whether you have to start with the zoning board because you need a zoning variance, or whether you start with the planning board. Then the planning board has their whole piece of all the things that, because, they have to have they've got their own checklist.
yeah,
So there should be a copy, basically you should have a file with that checklist in it and the planning board checklist behind it, everything they've signed off on and all the recommendations. And until that whole list is checked, there should never be a certificate of occupancy given, because, an example of that is the houses on Douglas Drive. Okay. That driveway, well, the driveway got moved and he had to come back because the state didn't like where they originally said they wanted it. So he came back and it was a quick approval. But there was things that were supposed to be done between them. They were supposed to do improvements to the land
Yeah.
that never got done. The power was supposed to be buried, but it doesn't. It goes all the way down the driveway and then goes down instead of coming across and down. So it's all these things that, you know, and I'm just using that as an example,
Yeah.
but the certificate of occupancy is given. Well, then what power do you have over, well, I'm in my house, what are you going to do about it? I'm
Yeah.
not the developer. You know,
Which-
I didn't build the house, I'm just the property owner. Who are they going to go after?
Yeah.
Property developer's got his money, he's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Homeowner's sitting there in a house and you're going to, no. You don't give a certificate of occupancy, then the person who's paying the bills, the developer, is going to hold that guy's feet to the fire, and they're not going to give him his last check.
Yeah.
You know,
And
but
that's
there should be
where-
that checklist, and that should be whether the select board has to be on it, and it could be one of those things we have nothing to do with it. Yeah, we just sign off on it.
Mhm.
You know, hey, we have nothing to do with this one, but it's clean, so we'll initial, or you put NA.
Yeah.
Fire chief, if there has to be a fire pond, the fire chief or the fire, you know, whoever should be looking at that. The police, if there's something that the chief has some sort of concern, and again, it may be one of those things, NA.
Mhm.
But if there's these concerns of, hey, we have it, my officers can't get to your house because of this or of that, you know, but and that's not new.
Yeah. No,
So
I know it's not new, and it's
Yeah.
come up more than a handful of times just in the last year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just, we're almost getting into a bigger situation with Kennebec.
Right,
Court.
and we were guaranteed that it's going to be something like that that's going to force our hand again, just like these other things that keep coming around, and we end
So
up
that's why it's good to have this coming to fruition
Yeah.
now.
Force our hand in what way?
to finally get this checklist done. We've been talking about this
is
checklist for well
something
over a
that
year.
the selectmen need to do, or the planning board?
Well, it's.
The building,
it's
it's everybody, but it's a checklist that the building department would have that before a certificate of occupancy can be given, all these boards should sign off on this front page checklist. That way they would know that he has met all the requirements that the planning board said he had, you know,
Not only that, but the homeowner or builder would know too.
Yeah.
right.
It's happier for everybody if everybody knows
it came,
what
it also
needs to
came
be done.
it also came about with the people we just did the petition warrant article.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there, they're coming to us asking for us to take the road, but they'd been living in their houses for 10 plus years, and the developer had never gotten the final sign off from the planning board.
Right.
So there's people living in houses, and the planning board had never finally done a sign off to go, yes, your subdivision's complete.
Right, so Valley Road is a good example of what happens here, and we can point to several examples. So Valley Road was a subdivision approved by some entity, all right, they got it approved, there was a road bond put in place. It was subsequently, much like Andy Crook buying from Builders, Builders Land, bought the subdivision. But for some reason, and I've got some documentation here, is the bonds for that were dropped at that point. So the new owner never went out and got bonds to complete, to ensure that they would complete Valley Road. Now luckily, they did the right thing. They got everything done, and when they finally put the top coat on the road, because they hadn't had to have really any interaction with the planning board at that point, they're like telling the homeowners association down there, okay, it's your road. And so then, of course, I start getting calls from the homeowners down there saying, what do? Our builder is telling us, they just put the top coat on the road, they're done, they wanna walk away, they don't wanna maintain it this winter, et cetera, et cetera. And, typically, we're running into some of these homeowner association agreements are poorly written. Now, that really has nothing to do with us. We don't give legal advice to, to prospective buyers. But homeowners associations, condo associations, I mean, you gotta read those contracts
Well,
when you
yeah.
sign up to buy a property, because, you know, you're stuck with whatever's in there. And, you know, in order to get a road approved, I mean, you need a set of as-built drawings, right? You need to have the planning board, you know, in our case, we use Kent Brown as our engineer. You know, Kent and Peter usually go out there, look at the road, make sure that, yep, the as-built plans and the road match, right? The elevations are correct, the drainage is where it should be, the fire pond is where it should be, et cetera. And, you know, all too often without a bond in place, a builder could literally just walk away and leave the homeowners and, you know, and the town, you know, kind of holding the bag to address all those issues. And just in the short time I've been here, we've run into a handful of these just in the year or so I've been here.
Mhm.
And it's avoidable, but, you know, I think part of the problem is that, you know, we have we don't really have a person that is responsible from a planning board perspective to ensure that all the conditions that were laid out in the original subdivision approval are being met. They don't have a staff member that has the expertise to do that. They kind of point toward the building inspector, but he's the building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. He's not the subdivision.
Which we've had that conversation with
Right,
him, because
so-
his concern is the four wall. I think he's made the statement, the
Right.
four walls. But that's why it's great that he wants to work on the system that'll tie all the boards in together from day one.
Right.
So when someone even comes in for an intent to cut,
Eh.
like in the system, will automatically generate a
Checklist.
checklist and a
Well-
dispersion of that information to potential
Right.
people,
So-
like, so that we don't have
so-
that other, like the other issue.
Other towns refer to it as a routing slip or a routing cover sheet. So that even things that come in, like an intent to cut that seem very benign, and of course, the assessors say, well, that's our territory, you know, we have jurisdiction over that, well, that's fine, but as we found out with a gentleman on Poor Farm Road, you know, the Conservation Commission really would have liked a heads up on that intent to cut, and as it turned out, there was a wetlands issue there. And had that at least been passed around so that people could take the time to review it from their particular board or commissions or, you know, department's perspective, that's where we can kind of raise red flags and address concerns. And there are RSAs with specific timelines of when things have to be done by certain boards and committees, and that complicates things. But it doesn't mean that we can't come up with a system where at least the chairman of, you know, or department head, has a chance to look at something, and like you said, if it doesn't apply to them, they have no concerns, they put NA or no comment, and they just move it on to the next person to sign off on. And I've run into situations, you know, we ran into a situation with the subdivision, not here, but in another town, where when the fire chief looked at it, they realized that the way the road was designed, that they could not, once they got a piece of fire equipment down there was no way to turn it around. It was too big to turn around, and the cul-de-sac wasn't big enough, and, you know, those are the other things that you run into. I had another situation where the grade coming off the main road into the subdivision was so steep that if you tried to get a fire truck up there, the rear end would drag on the street, and you'd basically,
It's
high center yourself. You know, how can you build houses on a road that fire apparatus can't get down? And that's the beauty of having it circulate and having everybody have some input or an opportunity for input. Whether they take advantage of the opportunity or not, will remain to be seen.
I also look at it as it then gives us that piece, if that's, you know, one, it holds our feet to the fire to make sure that stuff's done with the occupancy. But even if that slipped through the crack and it comes down to it and we have people come, you know, and this happened with like Green Farm and Jacqueline Drive and all these ones, and they come, they're like, we want the town to accept the road, and you could pull that file and go, well, you know, you got your occupancy, but there's these pieces that have never been finished.
Yeah.
And that happened with those. We're like, well, the developer never finished these pieces. Until he finishes, we're never gonna say yes, because then it's now our property, not his. So it's those pieces, and I think it's, you know,
And honestly, that's where the road bond becomes critical. Now, I had that problem in my own subdivision, where, you know, the partners that were building that subdivision after 20 years decided to go their separate ways, so they kind of left us hanging. But the town had $146,000 left in bond money, so they had a bigger bond, and as certain things were completed, they released parts of the bond to reduce the cost of the bond to the builder. But we still had $146,000 left, and they still needed to put up guardrails and street signs and fix some drainage issues and things like that. And they basically wanted to walk away, and the town said, no problem, we're gonna call Bank of America, and we're gonna seize the bond, and we're gonna take the $146,000 and give it to the DPW, and they're gonna go finish what you didn't. Well, as soon as they heard that, the very next week, they were down there, putting up guardrails, putting up road signs, putting stone markers in to mark the property bounds.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, that's the sort of stuff that the reason why, you know, the RSA requires bonding, for these types of projects. And, but, you know, we as a town have the responsibility to follow through, and I don't think that if I look at history, that's always been done. And you look at just some of the condition of the roads in some of these relatively new subdivisions that are just crumbling. Mountain View is a good example. That subdivision isn't that old that road should be in that kind of condition. I mean, my subdivision is 30 years old. You go down there and look at those roads, and yeah, they got some stress cracks here and there, but man, they're still in great shape because the builder was required to put down a good base, you know, a good base coat, you know, adequate drainage, etc., so that 30 years later, the town still doesn't have to pave that subdivision because it's in great shape. It's in better shape than most of the subdivisions around here, quite frankly, that are 10 years younger.
Now with the Kennebec court situation, like from the planning board's perspective, they asked me to take point with Andy Crook, like as a point of communication with him, and to try to like wrap him back in, because if a resident had brought up the fact that there were 3 houses being built and it looked like another foundation was going in, so then we were questioning, well, how does that happen when we haven't even gotten the bond yet for the road? So, and then talking to Andy, he said, yeah, he had gotten the building permits from Rick. And then we were chatting about some other stuff, and he mentioned that he was moving wells. So there was an existing plan of where these, I don't know, the community wells would be placed. But, you know, it looked not of the greatest idea, like from the old plans. And because they were pretty much took a cluster of wells, put them past the power lines, and then you had to get the water back to the development. So it was like 2,000 feet. Like you had to bring the water back into the development. So he had went ahead with the state and got approvals for the wells on each lot, and like to kind of mimic what happened on Jacqueline Drive, but he never came back to the planning board to say that that's what he was doing.
and
So this one's got a lot of
yeah, because you got
moving
to show that
components.
change.
yeah, where we had agreed to work with him on the bond aspect because it was kind of complicated, and not to hinder him, like at least starting the work or continuing the work on the road. But it just progressed faster than what anybody on the board had thought.
But then from what I got from you is that Rick never gave a building permit for the 4th pad to be poured, or the 4th
I'm not sure
foundation.
about
Yeah, no, I
that.
talked to him yesterday, because I went up there over the weekend, took a look, 3 houses up framed and a 4th foundation in the ground.
Mhm.
Now, when I talked to Susan on Thursday, you know, I asked her how many permits have been pulled, and I said, because I think I'm seeing 4 buildings in progress up there, so I don't think he has that many permits. as it turns out, when I talked to Rick, Rick says he's got building permits for the 3 that are framed and up, does not have a permit for the foundation. So I said, okay, and if you haven't been doing inspections, that means the footings for that foundation weren't inspected, the foundation hasn't been inspected. You know, this starts to have a, you know, a snowball
Yeah.
effect.
And that's why 2 weeks ago, when I spoke to Andy and then Rick, it was the feeling of the planning board that they wanted to have no more permits issued and no inspections done until the bonding issue was,
So,
well, hold on, like, just let me finish.
Yep.
But I thought that I was speaking to him as a planning board member and not as a select board member and then now chair, like where we have the authority to ask for that, like for him to stop issuing permits or to not do inspections, but they don't. So I didn't realize that, you know, like I thought I was talking, like speaking to him
Right.
as a planning board member. So this is something new today that I'm even just like
Right.
recounting like over like some of the conversations and
well,
learning my place. And then with something like that, I'd imagine we'd wanna come to this board first, like so that we could decide as a group to take that measure,
so.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other side of it, to that part of the conversation is, the building inspector does not report to the planning board, he reports to the board of selectmen.
Mhm.
The planning board shouldn't be giving direction to the building inspector unless it goes through the selectman's office. So,
So I'll be more astute and.
yeah, and I'm not being
Yeah,
critical of
yeah.
you, I'm just saying.
Well, no, you should be, like I was pretty
It-
critical,
it-
cause it's eye-opening to me today and, yeah.
You know, I think, you know, we talk about communication, and there are plenty of things we can all do to improve it, and that's one of them. You know, and you and I have talked, that working session that Dee was here, you know, going through that file, honestly, that's where the brakes should have been put on and all of these issues flushed out before Andy was even allowed to proceed. And I know you know, we don't wanna hold somebody up unnecessarily, we want their project to move forward. But at the same time, then we get ourselves into this bind and potentially create liability for ourselves in the process.
Mhm.
And, you know, and we don't wanna do that. So, you know, I
So
think.
really, like, before, I think it was probably, and you were at this meeting, I believe, probably back in January
Yeah, it must
or
have
so,
been.
the planning board decided to allow him to go forward, but it wasn't, it's almost not, it wasn't their decision. You know, like, I should have taken that, like, said, hey, hold on, I'm gonna bring this back to the select board, you know, cause there's more pieces in play than, and then, you know, put it in front of the select board, and at that point, we probably would have said, hey, let's err on the side of caution and get everything squared away first. Cause right now, we're in this situation where there's just moving components going on and,
And honestly, there's power struggles between the various boards on whose jurisdiction
and that's why I was trying to draw the
right?
lines myself.
Right.
And try to like I don't wanna hinder one board
Right.
with another board and include too many minds, but that's what should have happened.
So
So-
then,
I missed the mark 3 months ago or so,
Yeah,
yeah,
it-
and
it's-
that's just experience, I guess.
Well,
but so that would only apply to like some random old circumstance
but,
that the planning board would be bypassed. They would come directly to the select board and say, "Here's the property I bought. I'm going."
well,
I don't know. It's
Well,
a little confusing. to
Well, no,
me
it's like,
still.
one of the select board members is appointed to the planning board
Okay.
anyways.
Yeah.
So you sit on that board as like a voting member.
All right.
So you see a lot of these things come through, you know, and
So
I was just
you're
looking at it as an
seeing it.
appointment,
Yeah.
like to the board specifically, but not necessarily, cause I thought they had their own authority, but, which they do, but then there's certain authorities that only the selectmen have. the select board has, so.
Cause I guess for me, I'm kinda like, what do we do? I mean, as selectmen,
Well, at this
what
point,
does this have to do with
well,
our
at this
board?
point, Dickover, I'll make a motion to, have, Rick Donovan stop inspections and building permits on the Kennebec Court
Well,
subdivision
yeah,
pending clarification of all issues with the planning board.
Hasn't he already said he's doing that, or does he need?
well, I guess technically you make a second and then we'll discuss it.
Oh,
Is there a second?
Sorry.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, okay. So Rick has satisfied.
I understand
the
that,
planning
we're
board,
making
yeah.
it legal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So all I'm asking is to go back, I'm supporting your decision and how you handled it. I'm just
Okay.
making it that as a board, I am supporting your decision. I'm making the motion.
okay.
Jason seconded.
So, as of today, all the documentation has been forwarded to the planning board, and they're satisfied with where it's at right now. And the bonding issue is like still being worked on, but it's within days of being figured out, like what that bond amount is going to be. And Andy's already spoken to his insurance company, like, so that everybody, all the players are in place and everything's in place to make it happen right then. And there is already, like Rick's not gonna issue any certificates of occupancy until that piece is taken care of. So,
But what do we do about the foundations and pilings that have not, or that have not been inspected yet are already there?
so are those all backfilled already?
I don't know whether it's backfilled, cause I didn't bother getting out of my vehicle, cause I don't, you know, when you're on somebody else's property, I don't wanna tread, where I haven't been invited,
Mhm.
so, but the fourth foundation is clearly in.
Yeah,
I can see the top of the foundation from the road. So, but I couldn't really tell because it slopes uphill whether it's been backfilled up against it or not. I hope not, because Rick really needs to inspect those footings, et cetera,
yeah.
as part of the process, and, anyway.
And I don't know if he's like had already inspected that foundation or no. Okay,
He said no.
alright.
Nope.
So I wouldn't, yes,
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we vote yes on this, then do we need to have another vote to say, okay, now the building inspector can continue
Yes.
inspections? And based on what you're telling me, it sounds like there's a working together. There's not a real battle going on here.
And
Like
again,
there's,
the only reason I made the motion is to back what Sean did inadvertently as chair of the select board.
and like today, like I went back on that today, like in conversations with people, and made sure that the planning board was all set, and you know, like they've spoken to Fieldstone, or not Fieldstone, but Kent Brown. So they feel good where everything's at now, and they actually have Andy coming to their meeting tomorrow night. So I wouldn't be in favor of that motion at this point. So I guess ask for a vote. All in favor of John's motion?
can you iterate the motion?
So the motion
To-
was to have Rick stop all inspections and issuancing of permits for the Kennebec Court subdivision until everything is cleared and clarified with the planning board.
All in favor? All against? Nay?
Nay.
Alright, so we're just gonna, and I'll update everybody after, tomorrow night's planning board meeting.
But I would say if there's anything that needs to happen after that meeting tomorrow night, even if we have to come in here for a special quick meeting or something, so that, because we can't do that over emails,
Yes, yep. Okay,
okay?
thank you.
But, I mean, I'll back, you know, you're more in the loop on it. Scott will also hear tomorrow. Unfortunately, Wednesday nights I have other things, so I can't zoom in.
Mhm.
So, just keep us informed.
Will do.
Just something that popped into my head while we were talking about subdivisions. Some I thought, so the Wilder Village is what I'm thinking about. I know it's not I can't remember the street or whatever. Where I drove around, there's like, you know, X number of lights and one of them's not working and one of them's flickering or whatever.
Yep.
Is that possibly just paid for by the owners in that subdivision? Because you said it didn't come up on our, obviously it didn't come up on our,
So that you're talking Spindleback?
yes,
So Spindleback, we pay the electricity for those streetlights.
okay.
We get a separate bill, separate from all our other streetlights.
Oh,
I'm not sure why.
Is it, I think it's a different subdivision class, isn't it? Like a compact? I wonder if
Yeah,
that
it's
would
like a
be why.
cluster development.
Yeah,
or
cluster
something.
development.
And so how, you know, in trying to get a hold of our Eversource rep on this subject
Mhm.
is difficult to say
Okay.
the least. Though I've raised the issue on quite a few things, just trying to finish up our LED light project.
right.
You know, I wanna get that added to our regular ledger,
Yeah,
and we should probably move forward with swapping out the lights to LEDs while we're at it.
right.
So if there's 4 or 5 extra units, then, you know, we're gonna have the additional expense of doing that, but, you know, we're paying for the electricity, so we might as well take advantage of the rebates, and the cost savings of going LED. So that has yet to be worked out. Nobody can answer the question on why they were separate to begin with,
Okay.
and how we ended up with a separate bill, because we get, you know, we get a bunch, we get like 20 electric bills, you know, from Eversource every month, but we do get a specific one for the streetlights, and that is already reflected a savings that shows, you know, our new LED lights. We're already seeing a savings in that bill. Why those 4 or 5 never made it onto that original ledger, I don't know, but I'm gonna try to get it moved over, and I wanna get, you know, this
Yeah.
one that's out here on the ledger for the same reason. Because
Wonder
we're
if-
paying for that separately.
That Wilder Village is like kind of like that scenario that they spoke about where there was a town that decided to help out and get like almost like Bob Bromrell's request of
Yeah.
us, like to put it on the ledger and then back off,
Mhm.
or have it on and then like they were supposed to be paying that bill this whole time.
Right.
Like, you know
Who
what I mean?
knows?
Like if it
Well,
was,
so if that's the case, we're not invoicing their homeowners association, or whatever they have up there.
Yeah.
for those
cause I bet
lights.
it's something
And who
like
knows
that,
how
an
far
agreement
back we'd
between
have to
that
go to even
HOA
find that.
with the town. There's probably something like that.
Well, I'll have to, let me look into that, to see if I can find anything in the file that,
You know, because as much as I hated saying no to Bob, like it made more sense to not.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, it's a big thing that gotta go to a town vote and, but, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
alright, that's all I had under old and new.
All right, and then I just have one thing for new business, because we were looking at putting at like infrastructure, like in having businesses out towards like the town landfill
Mm-hmm.
end of town. And when we had them assess the solar power, they said that we needed to, there's plenty of opportunity for that, but that we'd have to make a significant investment in our power infrastructure.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? You know, like to create the infrastructure for
Potential.
business. Yeah. And then in doing so, we would get some benefit already out of the panels. You know, it's like a capital improvement, really. And
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly ask Eversource to put together a proposal to bring 3-phase power out there.
mhm.
It's
Is it-
expensive.
It's
No, I
gonna
know.
be expensive.
But it may be a way to invite more commercial business to the area, get the benefit from the solar power, like there could be a lot of financial gain, like
Could-
increasing our tax rolls.
There could be.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be,
Yeah, cause I don't know if he said millions or million, like, there's a big difference between million and millions, but he didn't throw an exact figure out, but.
I wouldn't doubt it's millions with an S.
Mhm.
You know, we got a quote just to, if you're familiar with downtown Wilton, that little stretch there, we were talking about the possibility of putting all the utilities underground just to clean up downtown. Yeah, that was gonna cost $1 million to bury for, you know, less than a half a mile. So, I mean, it would probably be millions.
Yeah.
But I mean, we certainly can ask them, and in fact, the gentleman I'm gonna talk to, if I can get a hold of him, he would be the one to be able to get that ball rolling
Mhm.
and, you know, put together a proposal for us that I don't think they'll charge us to do the proposal and give us an idea of, you know, exactly what this would entail.
Now, Sean, this sounds like it's from an earlier conversation or meeting.
Yep, yeah,
So what is this about?
we had a company come in and present on solar possibilities for the DPW garage, the town office, and out by the dump, cause we have the capped landfills.
So this solar would be used, it
it,
would be like fed back into the power grid?
No.
And we'd get a rebate, or what is the deal?
it's basically what it's, I mean, it would produce power, but what it basically does is we would be paying less because we'd be buying our power from this, but then they actually make, so what happens is the town doesn't spend any money on the actual solar.
Oh,
There's a co-op, there are people that want to build solar in order to get the tax breaks themselves. So they would upfront the money, it would all be built on town property, and we would get the benefit of solar power. But we never actually have to put out a penny for the building of the solar.
so it would be potential reduced rates,
Right.
but at the mercy of, I guess you're
Well, they
always,
lock
you're
in-
always at the mercy of.
Right, I think it was like a 20-year agreement or
Yeah.
something like that, and at the end of the 20 years, you know, we end up owning
Well, you,
the infrastructure. I
we,
believe.
you
Then you
can.
find out the solar panels cost
Well,
this
you-
much
yeah.
money to dispose of
Yeah.
it.
Well, you
Oh,
can.
shit.
What it is you can buy it or you can never buy it.
Oh,
Right.
and then it's there.
It's always there.
Because I've heard it can be really expensive to dispose of
Some of the panels,
these
you know.
solar panels. I
But
don't
so
know.
you can buy it or you can never buy it.
Yeah.
So you have that choice after X number of years to buy out the
I see.
owners, or you can go, nope, we'll just keep rent, buying
Yeah,
our
'cause
power.
I think it was like the 10-year
Yeah,
point was like the
Yeah,
best
the break
break
even.
point, yeah, so that if we bought them at that point, then we
Recap.
a higher benefit,
yeah.
like from them, and actually,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was discussed last.
It was last year sometime we had a
like
meeting.
October, shall
yeah,
I
October,
say?
November.
Yeah.
Yeah, revision power was
Vaguely
the company
remember.
we had in here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Might have
then
been
what
when
they
I first
said,
Right
started
down at the
coming.
Yeah.
school.
yeah.
Oh,
But then what they said was that we don't have three-phase power,
oh.
so there's no place to feed the power into. So that you have to have three-phase power to feed the feed back into the power grid.
Yeah.
So here we could do it on top of the roof of the garage. He says that was really he says the roof here you could do it, but it's tiny. He says probably more of a hassle. He says the garage there they could do it, and he says the prime place was the school, but we don't own the school. So,
Mhm.
but we also thought about looking to, because we don't have any sort of commercial zoning really in town,
Hmm.
but to do some sort of take some of these people who want to build commercial properties, big square metal buildings here in town and get them to build on the edge of town. Make more of a commercial area over on the land that we own next to the landfill. We have several acres out there.
Yeah, there's that big wedge.
Yeah, so that was, but again, without three-phase power, it's it's kind of questionable on who you would get to go out there, cause, so,
It's kind of tying in those two initiatives and.
yeah.
Cool. Alright, so we all set,
I am.
Jay, before we go into non-public, Scott?
Hey, could I have a few minute recess here?
Yeah.
Yep. Gonna take the recess first.
Well,
No,
I
we
don't
can
need
go
a
into
recess, I
non-public
just
and
need to
go-
go to
Okay.
While we shut down everything,
Yeah.
motion to go into non-public on RSA 91A3.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.